Hi again and welcome to DeepDive Talent Insights and Analytics channel. This is I Think I Love My Job. If you're new here and you're just passing through, welcome, and I am Kalifa Oliver, the resident expert on all things employee experience here at DeepDive. What are we going to talk about today? Talent, but specifically high potential and high performing talent. Let's go. So I know talent is a very, very broad topic for today, but specifically what we're looking at today is high potential and high performing talent. Understanding the difference between the two, how you assess them, how you look at them, and what it actually means to be high potential or high performing talent. If you work at any organization, you probably have heard high performing talent or high potential talent. And often you wonder, what does that actually mean, or how is that being classified by the powers that be within your organization? Of course, usually HR. Talent planning usually includes looking at your high potential and high performance talent, and that also is a part of succession planning and hiring and that kind of thing for any organization and any line of business or department or division within an organization. So what exactly is high performing or high potential talent? Let's look at them one by one. High performing talent is backward looking. It looks at how somebody has performed over a period of time up to the assessment to decide whether or not they have met or exceeded expectations or have met or exceeded goals that were set out for their particular job. High potential, on the other hand, is forward looking. It aims at trying to understand if a person will have great future impact on their role and the organization. What you see in the present is knowledge, skills, abilities, and other competencies that you've identified that would be helpful for this role going forward. And this person appears to have them and appears to be somebody who will be formidable in the future. Recognizing high performing talent is hard enough, but it is much easier than high potential talent. With high performing talent, you're dealing with data. You're dealing with data that actually exists. You can look from A to B. You can understand if this person has done really well. What high performing talent seeks to do is recognize that talent and reward that talent as needed. It looks to see if that person has had an impact on their role, has an impact on projects, growth, transformation, anything that is a big deal to the organization or that group at that time. High performing talent is generally celebrated with stuff like bonuses, promotions, movements, and more access to things that are normally not available, like meetings with leaders, etc., or being in on meetings that they wouldn't necessarily be a part of because they've demonstrated their ability to perform really well. High potential talent is a little bit more chaotic. High potential talent means that you don't necessarily have a lot of data to go on. You can potentially have past data, but you don't necessarily have past data. You can try to assume based on the data that you do have, regardless of how limited it is or not, whether or not this person is going to be a high impact person for this organization, for this department, for this division. That's a lot harder to do. High performing talent tends to be more objective. There is more evidence that is there. It is a lot more evidence based. High potential talent, however, tends to be a lot more subjective. And And the issue with that is there's a world of biases that can be baked into high potential talent. A lot of mistakes made with high potential talent is, do you look like me? Do you act like me? Do you remind me of me? So high potential talent often can be the enemy of diversity and inclusion. So you have to be really, really conscious and aware of why you're deeming somebody to have high potential. The other thing is, potential does not mean success. With high performing, you already have evidence of success. But high potential means that you are assuming success, but a car could be as good as it wants to be. If it has no gas, it's not going anywhere. So you have to be really careful because you're making big assumptions about this person's future ability to impact the organization. That said, somebody who's a high performer does not necessarily mean they're high potential. I know, but I'll repeat it again. Just because you're a high performer does not mean you'll be identified as high potential. Sometimes, if you are a high performer, it could be that you're very transactional. You can do the job that is put in front of you and you can do it really well. You don't necessarily have what it takes to go the next step. You're just really good at your job. Ideally, you want that space. If you look at a Venn diagram, that little area where high potential and high performer overlaps, and that's supposed to be your best talent. Also, your highest potential folk are not necessarily your best performers. I'll say that one more time. Just to get more complicated. Your high potential individuals are not necessarily your highest performers. A lot of high potential individuals are identified during early talent. So a lot of times you do not have enough evidence to predict future success. You're going on what you think the job may entail, that person can get to that next step. The analogy I like to use for this is in football, where there are several people who are amazing coming out of college. They're expected to go to the NBA. They're a #1 draft pick, and everybody's expecting them to just ball out when they get into the league, and they just fizzle and they're a dud. And what happened there is they were high performing in college, so they made it to first, second round of the draft. And so the NFL identified them as high potential talent. And so that's why they're in the round they're in. But just because they were identified as high potential talent, it didn't mean that came through. When there are other people who are undrafted who turn out to be amazing, right? And that's because they were not necessarily seen as high performing, but they were seen as high potential, and the team felt like they were taking a risk on them, and it panned out. So if you think about that, 10 points for using a sports analogy. That's basically how high performance and high potential works. Even in that analogy, when your top performer also turns out to ball out in the league, that's the ideal space that you want to be in identifying talent and future leaders. Here are some considerations that you should really take to heart and keep in your conversations and discussions when thinking about high performing talent. With high performing talent, you want to estimate about 25% of your talent pool. Is this employee critical to business success? Is this employee consistent with good performance over time? Is this person seen as a leader within the team, regardless of whether they have the title or not? Has the employee contributed significantly to key business initiatives that were really critical to team success? Has the employee been able to save the company time and or money? Has the employee been identified as a top performer within their team, within that division? within that organization. If this person decided to leave the organization, would their loss be considered regrettable? As in, would we be sorry we lost that person? Would that loss be considered preventable? As in, there were things that we could do as an organization to make it that this person stayed, whether it was conditions, renegotiation, contract, salary, benefits, bonus, etc. With high potential talent, you want to estimate about 5% of your talent pool. So a key thing to remember is that high potential talent is a smaller group. And remember, because it's a future-oriented group, it is a future-oriented concept, and it requires a lot of subjectivity. So you'd ask yourself questions like, will this employee be critical in moving the team forward? Can the team member lead key initiatives that are critical to the team and the organization? Can this person with this skill set progress through the organization successfully? Is this person ready to move into the next line of succession outside of the role that they're currently in? Can this person be successful in a role that has more responsibility and more leadership or management? Can this person lead through transformation and change? And if this person left, would their leaving be seen as regrettable? Will it be seen as preventable? The key thing to think of here is that overlap that we talked about. So that overlap between high performance and high potential is usually key in identifying those for which you will have the highest levels of regrettable loss. High potential and high performing talent identification is a part of career growth, which is one of the key performance indicators related to the employee experience. You always want to make sure that your organization is a place where people feel comfortable and feel like they can grow and develop their careers and there's staying power there. They want to make sure that their talents are being recognized and they're being used effectively and efficiently by the organization. They want to make sure that if there are any changes that need to be made, that they are aware of it and they have the feedback to make changes so that they can be comfortable and they can be their best selves at work. That is a part of the experience. It's an important and critical part of the experience. And it's also a part that leaders and managers have a big role to play, i.e. the organization has to have structures in place to ensure that this is being done well, that this is clear, that this is a big part of what they do. Unlike when you recognize high-performing talent, there are some challenges that you have to think through when it comes to high-potential talent, outside of course, the obvious, which is the biases. But there are questions you need to ask yourself. Do you tell somebody that you've identified them as high potential? Is that good to do? You also have to consider that what if that person doesn't perform well? Do they then not become high potential anymore? Do you take them off the list? So you got to think about these things. Of course, my recommendation, and most of the people that I've spoken to within this field, their recommendation is you do not tell somebody that they are high potential. The problem though is when you create programs for high potential and high performing people, it's usually pretty clear who you think needs to go in this rotation, needs to be identified for this program. The issue you always run into is if you're high potential, are you high potential for life? You know? And a lot of times that's not the case. Like we talked about, some people, when it's time to prove themselves, they fail. They may have had high potential, but like a car with no gas, they're not going anywhere. So do you let them take the place of somebody else who actually might be better? So these are decisions that and discussions that you as an organization have to have and make a decision on, a stance on. It's not an easy decision. It's still a very fairly new part of the discussions you talk about when thinking about talent planning and succession planning and the employee experience. And and it's one that we will continue to have conversations about. There's a lot of research being done, I know, in the IO space and in the HR space about it, and hopefully we'll get more answers over time. My last piece of advice for both high potential and high performing talent is always make sure that when you have structures in place to identify these two groups of people, that you have something that is a next step. If it's high performance, what's the next step? Is it a promotion? Is it a reward? Is it a bonus? You need to have something in place, or else it's completely useless, right? You want to make sure that it's done, and it's done in a way that there is an end to it. There is a direction and a path. Same thing with high potential talent. If you're going to take the time to identify high potential talent and justify why these people are considered high potential talent, then you really have to have some sort of program, something to move them into, because again, you gotta take the empty tank to the gas station, right? So it might be training programs, it might be development programs, but there are decisions that you really have to make. There are rotation programs. You can try to focus on only identifying those who are considered high potential and high performers, and then create a program for them to go into. This will be probably like 1% of your talent group. So a lot of things to think about, but I thought it's important to bring it up because career growth has been shown to really be the number one reason people actually leave organizations. And without thinking about talent and talent planning and how it falls into the employee experience, you just leave a gap to lose amazing talent. That is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this discussion on high potential and high performing talent and how they relate to the employee experience. As always, if you have any ideas or thoughts, please feel free to put them in the comments, because I'm always happy to read and discuss. And if you like what you see, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. I am always happy to have you here, and thank you for the support so far. And as always, I will leave you with this. There is always room to have a brilliant experience. Bye.